It is now an open secret that the Queen did not get on with Margaret Thatcher, whose mammoth period in office straddled the decade from May 1979 until November 1990. In War of the Windsors by Lynn Pickett, Clive Prime and Stephen Pryor, the authors reveal that the Queen, a traditionalist at heart, disapproved of a female prime minister and found the Premier's personal style affected and abrasive, but the gulf between them went much deeper than that, according to claims. Royal expert Sarah Bradford wrote, "Both the palace and loyal Thatcherites protest that the two women got on very well, but the indications are that Elizabeth was always perfectly professional and correct in her relations with her prime ministers. In her heart of hearts she not like her or approve of all the changes she was making to the fabric of Britain." In private, the monarch referred to Mrs. Thatcher as that woman, according to reports. In The Queen and Mrs. Thatcher, An Inconvenient Relationship, the first published analysis of their lack of rapport, author Dean Palmer claims the two female figureheads met and disliked each other on sight. It also reveals how the monarch mocked Mrs. Thatcher's accent, which she described as Royal Shakespeare received pronunciation from circa 1950 inches. The book tells how Mrs. Thatcher's entire character was anathema to the Queen. Meanwhile, Mrs. Thatcher is said to have loathed trips to Balmoral, considering them a tedious waste of time. Mr. Palmer, who has made documentaries for the BBC, Channel 4 and ITV, writes, "For over a decade they quietly waged a war against each other on both a personal and political stage, disagreeing on key issues including sanctions against South Africa, the miners' strike and allowing US planes to bomb Libya using British military bases. Elizabeth found the means to snub and undermine her prime minister through petty class put-downs and press leaks." The book tells how the Queen, now 92, poked fun at Mrs. Thatcher, known for her mimicry. The Queen's favourite Mrs. Thatcher gag was about the Prime Minister visiting an old people's home, imitating Mrs. Thatcher's grandiose accent as she shook the hands of an elderly resident. The Queen asked, "Do you know who I am?" before adding, "No," replied the confused resident, "but if you ask Matron, she'll tell you." The two women used to meet every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. but Mrs. Thatcher would irritate the Queen by arriving too early, sitting on the edge of her chair and refusing to listen, according to the book. Mr. Palmer wrote, "Thatcher did love to lecture, which did not go down too well with Her Majesty." After the Falklands conflict, the Queen even started to worry that Mrs. Thatcher was working too hard and urged her to take a holiday. The 1982 war, in which Prince Andrew served as a Royal Navy helicopter pilot, should have brought the women closer but instead drove a bigger wedge between them when Mrs. Thatcher took the salute at the homecoming parade instead of the Queen. It was only when the Prime Minister was ousted by her cabinet in 1990 after 12 years in office that the Queen began to sympathise.